Dear friends of Salutogenesis, welcome to the workshop on reimagined concepts of salutogenesis, a systemic dynamic model of healthy self-regulation. My name is Theodor Petzold. I'm a GP and lecturer at the Medical University of Hanover and Carl Remedios Medical School in Idstein. I have developed the salutogenic communication method and am the founder of the Center of Salutogenesis in Bad Gandersheim, Germany. Whenever, as a schoolboy, I had chaos in my room, my father would say, order is half of life. As a student, I replied, I like the other half better. The subject of chaos was attractive to me. As a GP, I had to manage chaos day in and day out. A colleague in our working group called us GPs chaos managers. People often came to the practice spontaneously and with unpredictable concerns. It was always also my job to bring some coherence into this chaos. This was also an approach in the treatment of patients, because illness is a state that is close to chaos. Positive health is close to coherence. A state close to chaos is often a state from which something new can emerge. So our main question is, how can human beings manage chaos to develop healthily? In his foresight, Antonovsky wrote as early as 1987, I will first place the salutogenic question in the context of the problem that I feel is emerging as central to all of science, the mystery of transforming chaos into order. How does order come into being? Chaos research fascinated me from the moment I first heard about it. For me, it has brought the natural sciences much closer to real life than the traditional sciences. Thus, I have developed a model of psychophysical self and coherence regulation and a salutogenic psychodynamic. I will give you my answer to the question of dealing with chaos already in advance. Living beings are striving towards a dynamic order, like a state of coherence. They are following an attraction principle in the strive for coherence through self-regulation. A state of coherence is attractive also for human beings. It is the overriding motivation. Klaus Grave, the founder of neuropsychotherapy, wrote 2004, coherence regulation takes place mostly unconsciously and pervades all psychological events. Therefore, it seems to be accurate to speak of a supreme or pervasive regulatory principle of psychological processes. We can rethink our being healthy from the coherent goal, similar to thinking heuristically. In chaos and complexity research, attractors have been discovered as abstract, formative target information. For our human complex healthy development, we call these attractive information of goals attractiva, to remove them from the temptation of predictability and to make clear that they are effective as dormant entities and not as actors. The anector means male activity. Both wound healing and healthy developments in general seem to follow an attraction principle, a dynamic that is oriented towards attractive goals, attractiva such as health and coherence. Where are the attractiva located? We can imagine the attractiva in a possibility sphere, space, a complete virtual information sphere. Being can be in resonance with the formative information at any moment, in presencing, as Otto Scharmer calls it. With this view, my answer to the salutogenic question about the origin of health is, people can develop healthily if they are following their attractive coherence goals. Coherence means inherent consistence as well as relatedness to comprehensive systems. Thus, salutogenesis is more a nonlinear result of an often hidden organismic striving for coherence than the linear result of a measurable factor. We resonate with the virtually attractive state of coherence as a whole or with our brain. Thus, brain researchers have found out that our brain functions goal-oriented, even already during perception. Our brain is looking for coherence. Attractiva subjectively appears to us as motivating ideals, visions, or wishes. With this view, we can understand ourselves anew from our overarching coherence goals and ask, how can we approach coherence in reality? It was fitting to this view that the WHO defined health as the ideal state of complete well-being, physical, social, and mental. Our organismic function as well as our self-regulation are oriented towards approaching attractiva, towards coherence in our bodies, with our fellow human beings, in the public sphere, culture, with our natural environment, on a global level as well as spiritually. Yet the path to this can be chaotic. After all, our self-regulation has to cope in a constantly changing environment. In this the dis-ease continuum Antonovsky has already thought about this dynamic of healthy development in a similar way. A self-regulatory approach process is recursive. It revolves, like our life, around our attractive goals, which we strive to approach: coherence, health, needs, desire states. So these are in the center of the model, open to another vertical dimension, to the possibility space. These attractiva give us the internal benchmark for assessing situations and experiences. They tell us which deviation of an actual state from a desired state we consider significant. Here we find the motivational component of meaningfulness under a little other but similar aspect, as described by Antonovsky, at the beginning of our dynamic coherence regulation. It is from this motivation that action to approach coherence occurs, the second phase to coherence regulation, the manageability aspect of the sense of coherence. For example, when blood glucose deviates more from its set point, possibly being 60 milligrams per deciliter, we feel hunger and are motivated to seek food and then eat. This activity, like all action, is an interaction with the environment. After eating, we balance and reflect on whether we are full, tired, invigorated, or nauseous. From the experience, we learn for the next time we are hungry. Third phase of coherence regulation. Thus, a feedback of learning into the dynamics of self-regulation takes place. Quite similarly, our coherence regulation works in social life. When we have been alone for a long time, we may feel a need for relationship. Then we look around for a partner. When we have found one and are with him or her a while, we reflect the interaction, whether it was what we had wished for. If not, we try to change the partnership so that it's closer to what we want. In this third phase, we develop understanding, the cognitive aspect of comprehensibility. The same principle applies in public cultural life. As long as we experience society as just, we are hardly motivated to work for justice. But if we judge something to be unjust, we may stand up for justice. However, the result can be longer in coming. Now we live in a world which is not only constructive for us, but also threatening, destructive, entropic. Thus, throughout evolution, in addition to the ability to follow attempting and other attractive goals, we have also developed abilities to avert danger and establish security. Depending on our assessment of a situation in relation to our coherence, one of our three basal motivational modes is turned on. When we perceive something enticing or when a need presents itself, the dopaminergic approach system is activated to build up our organism. When we assess something as threatening, the avoidance system turns on to defend our dynamic order and to establish safety. And when we are in a coherent environment and do not feel a need right now, we are able to relax and be serene in the coherence mode and to tune into our environment. Linked to these three motivations are basal settings of metabolism to gene activity, body tension and behavior, feeling and thinking. The motivational approach and avoidance systems have been known in psychology for many years. That there is a third motivational mode that is superordinate to these two has been discovered in addiction research nearly 20 years ago and has been termed liking. This motivation enables us to say no in the face of a temptation like a drug. In manifest addictions, this liking motivation doesn't function. Since our striving is ultimately for coherence, as Klaus Grabe has described it, I have called this overarching motivational system coherence system. Here we also find the global orientation of confidence as Antonovsky defined the sense of coherence SOC. For our short-term and situational goals, the approach and avoidance systems are primarily responsible. For the longer-term and sustainable goal, the coherence system is in charge. In the coherence mode, we strive for integration even of approach and aversion impulses, such as affects. In the coherence mode, our consciousness can have a function as an inner observer. It is felt as a state of serenity. In this state of consciousness, we may be particularly receptive to information such as attractiva from the possibility space. If we can then also follow this coherence motivation, we have a greater chance of developing healthily. Presumably, the disposition of the coherence system is genetically determined, and the formation is shaped by experience, as it is known for the other two motivational systems. The formative experiences are first early childhood relational experiences, and second, cultural and environmental conditions. We can help shape these and thus have an influence on healthy development. There are already many good approaches to this, from mindfulness exercises to environmental protection and other meaningful activities. Meaningfulness in life is an important aspect of the coherence mode. As brain researchers have found, thinking about meaningfulness especially activates the prefrontal cortex, PFC. There, many connections come together with both the dopaminergic system and the nucleus accumbens and the fear center in the amygdala. Thus, there appears to be a higher level center here from which the approach and avoidance systems can be regulated. In addition, located in the right PFC is a center for fairness, which deals with fair cooperation. Thus, here we can see another aspect of the mode of coherence that is fundamental to interpersonal relationships. Cooperating fairly is possibly also a bridge to the question of group coherence, something which Antonovsky was concerned with. Cooperation and thus relationships between people are also purposeful. As Michael Tomasello found out, they are determined by their intentionality. Thus, they ultimately follow the same attraction principle that I have based my model of individual coherence regulation on. Approaching coherence in a changing multidimensional world. Antonovsky repeatedly emphasized the systemic reference of salutogenesis. Our healthy self-regulation takes place in a multidimensional environment. Our body regulates its temperature, oxygen, and water balance, etc. in its environment. Our immune system cooperates with microorganisms or fends them off. This I call the first life dimension. To our closest fellow human beings, we seek a loving, accepting relationship in predominantly nonverbal communication. In this second life dimension, we strive to pass on life and develop it. In the third, the cultural dimension of life, the public sphere, in our life and language, in our professions, we seek explicitly regulated cooperation for the purpose of acquiring and passing on knowledge, and to establish our common material and value-oriented basis of life. In a spiritual life dimension, we seek transcultural, global, and possibly even cosmic coherence. In all these life dimensions, there are constructive and threatening situations to which we want to react adequately in each case. To overcome these challenges, we have the three modes of motivation that have evolved in evolution. So we can imagine not only our individual lives, but also the evolution as such as a striving and the development towards more complex systemic coherence. From material particles via primitive unicellular organisms, via a sexual as well as social transfer of life to human cultural self-organization. Today it expands even further to the global self-organization of mankind in the biosphere. If it is to be successful, it has to be characterized by a sense of responsibility and ethics, both qualities of the coherence mode. Thus, our individual health development is linked not only to our families and respective cultures, but also to that of the biosphere and humanity. In all these life dimensions, we are in a reciprocal resonance relationship with the coherence in our respective environments. So far, my introduction in the topics of the workshop. I hope you got enough and the right information to start working in small groups on the overarching question, what do we need to co-create a good life in our multidimensional world? To do this, I suggest working in 3 small groups, up to 5 people, on 3 topics about our coherence regulation in the 4 life dimensions. Each question refers to a phase of coherence regulation. What motivates you? What is meaningful to you? Find approach goals, coherence goals, as well as avoidance goals in relation to yourself, self-care, your close fellows, family, friends, society, culture, public, profession, organization, life and language, global and spiritual environment. Second group, what capacity to act, as well as resources and opportunities do you have in the 4 life dimensions? For yourself, in relationship with your closest fellows, in society, in global and spiritual environment. The third group, what can you learn and understand in the 4 life dimensions? For yourself, self-care, with your closest fellows, in your culture, and in global and spiritual awareness and involvement. But before we start in the working groups, have you any questions about the presentation? thank you very much for your attention.